So last week on the podcast, we talked about a really complicated issue. It surrounds the idea that whether or not the NBA should allow 18-year-olds to go straight from high school and enter the NBA draft. I made a video called, "Should 18-year-olds be allowed in the NBA?" It's been a week, and the more I think about that video, the more I look back on it and reflect on it, the less I like it. It's not an awful video. I did try to present both sides of the issue, but here's the problem. The video has no payoff at the end. There's no resolution. I ended the video by saying, look, I don't have the answers. I don't know how to solve the issue. And a friend of mine told me that that's actually kind of a cop-out. They said, I don't like this, and I really didn't like the way you finished the video. So I took a look at it, and I agree. I think the video didn't end well. The topic didn't end well at all. So I want to follow it up. And I just want to start by saying I do not believe the NBA should actually change anything. When it comes to the systematic failures of the NBA draft, I don't think you can solve the problem. I think things should stay the way they currently are. And if you don't know how things currently are, here's how they are. The NBA says you must fit 2 different criteria in order to enter the NBA draft. The first thing is you must be at least 1 season removed from high school. You got to have played 1 year after high school somewhere else. And you must be at least 19 years old during the calendar year of the NBA draft. So, again, you got to play 1 year after high school, and you must be 19 years or older. And there are a lot of problems with this current system. It's not perfect. There are 2 sides to consider in this. You got to consider the players, and you got to consider NBA decision makers, people like general managers in the NBA and NBA scouts who look for and recruit different players and scout players and decide whether or not they want to draft them into the NBA. So players and the league. There are 2 sides to this issue. And I do not believe the NBA should change their rules at all. The problem with my last video is I didn't clearly state that. There is no right answer. There's not a way to solve this. I feel bad. Like, I wish I could fix the system. I can't. But I think the current system is somewhat of a compromise that allows for both sides, the players and NBA general managers, to have somewhat of a benefit on. They both win a little bit and they both lose a little bit. So in the current system, a basketball player graduates from high school, and they have 2 options. They can either go play college basketball, or they can go play basketball in Europe, go play professional basketball, get paid, and play in Europe for a year. Now, literally 99.9% of these players that are ready to play in the NBA at 18 years old go from high school to college for 1 year, play college basketball, and if they're good enough and dominate 1 year of college basketball, they move on to the NBA draft, and it's called that. Those guys, roughly 15 guys a year, are called one and dones. They're players who go to 1 year of college and they're immediately done. They're 1 year in college, then they're done. It's called a one and done. And most NBA or NBA caliber players hate college basketball. NBA players do not like college basketball at all, and for a couple of reasons. Look, these are players who have hundreds and hundreds of followers online. They have fame before they ever get to college campuses. They're famous from their dominance in high school. And college basketball programs, the NCAA college basketball programs take these stars, guys who have tons of followers, hundreds of thousands, and really a lot of big impact. They're stars. I mean, these kids are high school stars. The NBA and college basketball takes these high school stars and makes millions and millions of dollars on them with merchandise, ticket sales, television deals, shoe deals, promotions. Colleges make a ton of money off of their players, and the players never get any compensation. They never get any amount of money for their efforts. Here's the little amount of compensation a college athlete gets. They get free tuition for classes they frankly don't want. They just want to play football or they want to play basketball. They get free food, and they get a free place to live. Colleges make a ton of money, and they really only reward players with the basic essentials: food, housing. It's meager compared to the amount of money that colleges make. Colleges make millions and millions of dollars, and the players see none of it. the years of hard work, all the effort they put in for years, they're not paid for. You can't discount all the hard work it took for an NBA, for a college basketball player to get to college, and they're just not paid fairly. They're not compensated for their efforts. Now, and the NBA, this is their perspective. So players feel undervalued and underpaid. The NBA and NBA decision makers, general managers, scouts, the NBA would prefer to have players spending a year in college. They like that. Having potential NBA players spend a year in college allows the NBA another year to scout players. It allows them to make a more informed decision when you give a guy $1 million contract. It's like a two-step verification process. The NBA decision makers want a lot of information when they decide to pay a player. He's really good in high school. That's one step of verification. Let's make sure in college, if he's still really good in college, that's the second step of the verification process. And you can make sure you can make a fully informed decision when you draft a player in the NBA draft. That is how the current system works. A really good basketball player plays 1 year of college, then enters the NBA draft. It's flawed, it's imperfect, but I don't think it should change. I do not think that should change at all. It's a compromise for both sides. I know it's not perfect, it's ugly, but it's worth noting a majority of college basketball players play 3 to 4 years in college. It's very rare to have an 18-year-old kid straight out of high school who's ready to play immediately in the NBA. That's not a common occurrence. But it does happen enough we have to talk about it. So let's talk about it. The current system as it is, making those players wait 1 year before entering, is a perfect compromise for both the players and for the NBA. The NBA doesn't want 18-year-old kids in their league. They don't want young kids who lack maturity. It's a weird dynamic. If you're 18 years old or 19 years old on an NBA roster, as many of these one-and-done kids are, they're 19 years old. They can't go out and drink with their teammates. They're stuck inside playing video games at night while all their teammates are out having fun. And it's a weird dynamic. You're not really the same age as everybody else in the league. The NBA also does not want scouts at high school basketball games. They just don't. And frankly, I really think that the NBA would love to have players spend 2 years in college. They would like more time for guys in college to develop. The more info you get, the better of a decision you can make when you draft a player. And look at just recently, we saw Markelle Fultz. He was the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. A complete bust. He failed. And the problem is that NBA general managers are drafting 19-year-old kids, hoping that they're going to develop into a superstar without really knowing. The NBA is not drafting fully developed, really polished players. They're drafting projects, guys that they hope in 3 or 4 years could be impactful on an NBA roster. It's a weird dynamic. You're not drafting guys who are ready. I think if the NBA could have it their way, they would have most players spend 2 or 3 years in college rather than just the 1 season. I don't know. I think this is a way to meet in the middle. So NBA general managers wish that players were in college for more time. The players don't want to spend any time in college. They wish they could skip right to the NBA. Here's why the players want to get straight to the NBA. One of the reasons. First off, the players have families to feed. Like they're rough. They come from bad backgrounds. Some of these guys want their family to have money, generational wealth immediately. That makes sense. It's not always that deep, though. Sometimes it's this, is that the first contract you get in the NBA is very limited. You can only make a certain amount of money. The second contract allows you to have a max deal, make a way larger amount of money. And the sooner you get into the system, the sooner you can accrue years towards making that second contract, which earns more money. I think the current system is a perfect compromise. It's a way to meet in the middle. Players don't get to the NBA immediately, but they still get to the NBA far earlier than maybe general managers would be comfortable with. And general managers get a year to really verify their purchase. I hate to say it that way, but look, if they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars investing a contract into a player, don't you want to make sure you're getting the right guy? A guy who can handle adversity, who's been through something? I don't know. Like, it's a big jump to go from high school basketball straight to the NBA. A lot of NBA players, if you're that good You're the best player in your high school. Your entire life, you've never met anybody better than you. It can probably be a big shock to get to the NBA and go, oh crap, get hit in the face, knocked back on your butt, and really, really struggle for the first time ever. So I don't know. Players get money sooner, but they still got to spend 1 year in college. The way the system works, they get money sooner than they would if they were there for years, but they still got to spend 1 year. And the NBA doesn't get 18-year-olds, but they still get players a little bit earlier than they would like. The NBA would like to have more polished, more developed NBA players, but you got to make a standardized system that works. So my point is this. I really think that this system, the way it is now, is a perfect compromise. The NBA gets kind of what they want, but not completely. The players get kind of what they want, but not completely. You got to appease both sides. And right now, the way it is flawed, it's imperfect, but it's better than it could be. And I don't think there's a better answer. But I do want to include you guys in this conversation. A lot of people sent in their ideas for how they would change the NBA draft. So many people who listen to the show sent me all kinds of ideas. Most of them are wild goose chases. A lot of these ideas were things that are like, you know, I've already said my stance. I wouldn't change the system. I don't think there's a better, more interesting system. But however, one listener sent in an idea that sent me deep down a rabbit hole. I want to take you through the whole thought process and that whole conversation. So first, one big reason why the NCAA cannot pay college basketball players is the inequality between programs. You cannot make a standardized payment scale for players. You can't. Duke basketball, North Carolina basketball, gigantic, massive programs make millions and millions, maybe even billions of dollars. However, in contrast, Washington State basketball, another program, a Division I program, makes nothing. They're like, they break even, if that. Duke basketball can afford to pay their players. Washington State University could not pay their players millions of dollars. They don't have that kind of capital. They don't have the revenue for that. So it's interesting, you know, that's one problem, is the inequality between different programs. The other problem is this. How do you pay your star athletes? A guy like Zion Williamson is the best player. He's the highest, he's the biggest star player in college basketball. Whether he's the best or not doesn't matter. If he could make money in college basketball, Zion Williamson would make the most amount of money. But how do you pay players? How do you decide how to pay one guy and who's worth more than this? It's not professional sports. You can't say you're worth the most, you'll make the most. It doesn't work that way. And how do you differentiate between Zion Williamson and just a random backup at the University of San Diego? You don't. Now, maybe what you could do is, here's one option. If you want to pay players, you could institute a salary cap. Maybe pick any number. Maybe every franchise gets, every program, every college program maybe gets, say, $50,000 a year. And you can spend the $50,000 any way you want. And whether some programs, maybe really bad programs, would say, Zion, we'll give you $50,000, our entire salary cap, for you to come here. And some programs would very differently balance it. They'd give some players 10, another player 5, another player 8, and have a very different balanced cap system. But I like this idea because if a small program wanted to offer the best player in the league, the best player in college basketball, $50,000, the best recruit in high school, to say, come to our program, we'll give you $50,000, that's really cool. But then someone sent me this idea. A guy named Quinn, a listener named Quinn, sent me a really long message with the basic premise of this. Why don't we allow college athletes to sign endorsements? Initially, I loved this. What I thought was giving players the ability to sign endorsements would solve the problem of how do you pay star athletes? How do you pay a guy like Zion Williamson when you also got to pay a backup at San Diego? You can't pay them on the same scale. This way, the great players who deserve the most amount of money would get really big deals. If you have a giant following, if you're Zion Williamson, and you have a giant demand behind your name, you could sign an endorsement and endorse a product, get paid for it. I like this. I really like this idea. You know, you could have guys signing brand deals. You could have them signing autographs. They could have YouTube channels like that guy, the former UCF kicker. You could even make money from a normal job if you wanted. I really loved the idea of having college athletes sign endorsements. I like the idea of having them have brand deals and have endorsements and have being able to sell their autographed stuff. That sounded like a good idea until I ran into this problem. What if an athlete at a Nike school, what if Zion Williamson he's at Duke, a Nike school. What if Zion Williamson wanted to sign a endorsement with Adidas? Well, crap, you can't do that because you wear Nikes because you're at a Nike school. The school signs the shoe deal, not the players. The players are owned by the school. It's a messed up flaw. It's a big problem in their program. But no, I solved that. So I thought, okay, well, if you can't have players signing shoe deals because the schools control shoe deals, they control the apparel, maybe you could have players signing endorsements and being a part of endorsements that are non-apparel or clothing related. You can have them doing like Gatorade or Cliff Bars or just drinks in general. Maybe they're doing insurance commercials. Whatever you want. Maybe you could do brand deals with different kinds of products. And that's a solid idea at first. At first, it's a great idea to have players have giant social media followings. Maybe they could they could take advantage of their following, have Instagram ads. That's a great idea. And that's really, I want to just say first, that's some of the hypocrisy of college is college markets itself as something to help students be more successful. It's mostly BS, right? College is a business, but it's very weird how differently student athletes are treated. If an 18-year-old college freshman has 1 million followers on Instagram, he could sign a brand deal tomorrow, and it's fine. He can have endorsements, and college has nothing to do with it. But the minute you put a basketball or a football in a player's hands, suddenly they're not allowed to make any money. It's very, very weird and bizarre. I don't like it. But this is why you can't give players endorsements. This is why players like Zion Williamson cannot sign endorsements and have personal income while they're in college. It would change recruiting completely. I might have lost you. You might not even be listening at this point. But basically, whatever program has the most money behind it would control all the recruits in sports. So we see people like Nike's founder Phil Knight went to Oregon. He gives a lot of money to Oregon. Gatorade was invented at Florida. Their founder went to Florida. Under Armour has ties to Maryland. How long until a company says, we will give you an $11 million endorsement if you sign with the college we decide. We want you to go to, we love William and Mary. If you go to William and Mary, we'll give you an $11 million brand deal. You can't police endorsements. You can't do it. It works in theory. It's a great idea to say, Zion Williamson, this star at Duke, has a giant following. He deserves to get paid. Well, let's let him sign with Cliff Bars. He can endorse Cliff Bars on his Instagram account. But how long until that would affect recruiting? I don't know. How long until Duke fans say, let's endorse Zion Williamson. We'll start a GoFundMe, and we're going to sign the best high school athlete in college because we're going to raise millions of dollars to bring him to our program. And look, in theory, that's a great idea. It's actually really cool. It's a solid idea. A GoFundMe to recruiting. I like that. The problem is schools don't have the money. Schools that don't have a ton of money and schools that don't have a bunch of support behind their program would get absolutely crushed. How early would it start? If you're 16 years old, should a 16-year-old be recruited to go to college sports? Should they be making decisions that affect their family? I don't know. Maybe, like you have child actors, Drake and Josh. Those kids were like 12 when they started acting. They made a ton of money, $25,000 an episode. Maybe you should have 16-year-olds making massive amounts of money. But there's a lot of gray area here. It's very, very weird, and it's very, very delicate. And if you have, I like this idea that if alumni at a really terrible basketball school all banded together and raised a ton of money, they could bring the best recruit in college basketball to their program. But if this happens, if a bunch of alumni band together, they raise a bunch of money, they're bringing a guy to their program, does that player sign a contract with the alumni? Like, what if the player takes the money and doesn't go to that school? Or what if he transfers? Or what if he just takes the money and drops out of college? He has $11 million. Why even go to college? This is where we run into all kinds of problems, and I just don't see a world where, look, maybe recruiting's already all about money, but at least, and maybe you could argue that if brand deals and this kind of stuff were instituted, maybe at least it would be honest. It would be open to the public, and it would be honest the way players are paid in college sports. But I don't think you should include money in recruiting as much as you can, because It's not competitive. For really low, bottom of the rung programs, you will never be able to compete with top shelf programs like NC State or North Carolina basketball or Duke. So honestly, I think the best solution, long story short, if you want to fix college basketball, there's nothing you can do. I think the way it is now is the best compromise you could possibly have. I think the best players in college basketball should wait 1 year, then enter the NBA. I like this. One fan who likes my show responded to this and said that NBA general managers should not be involved in the process of deciding whether an 18-year-old can make money playing basketball or not. And first of all, this isn't true. If you want to make money immediately out of high school, go to Europe. You can go make a ton of money in Europe. You're allowed anytime. If Zion Williamson didn't like the idea of playing at Duke, he could have gone to Lithuania and played basketball. He could have made money doing that. But of all the options, I think the system it is now, where you make players pay, the NBA forces players to play 1 year outside of high school and be at least 19 before they join the NBA draft. It's a good program. It's not great. It's not perfect. But of all the bad options, it's the best. It's a compromise. For both sides, they win a little bit and they lose a little bit. So again, I want to restate, the NBA should not change anything. 18-year-olds should not be allowed to 18-year-olds should not be allowed to enlist in the NBA draft. And I do not think the NBA should change a single thing about their rule book. I think it works. It's a compromise. It's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. And of all the bad options, this one is the best. My name is Zach Schomler. This is my podcast, Strong Opinion Sports. It is my favorite thing in the entire world. And I want to ask for your help. I want this show to grow. I want more people to watch and more people to listen to this podcast. My dream is to do this show as my full-time job. I want to own it myself. I want to do it on the internet and have complete control. I don't want to do it for CBS or ESPN. I don't want to work for a big network. I want to own it myself. And if you believe in that dream, please do me a huge favor. Help me grow by telling your friends about this podcast. Share it on Facebook, share a link on Twitter, maybe you screenshot it, put it on Instagram. I don't have a marketing strategy beyond this. This is all I have. A lot of people, one of the most common comments I get on YouTube is, you have great content. We love your stuff. You deserve more viewers. What you should do is you should buy ad spaces on Facebook or Twitter or promote yourself and buy ads. I have no money. I am a broke college kid. I can't buy ad spaces. I don't have money to pay for books. And so my plan, this is my marketing plan, this is my strategy. All I plan to do is put every ounce of effort I have into making the very best podcast I can. I believe if I make a great product that people believe in, that people like, then they will share it with their friends. And so if you agree with that, if you believe in the show, if you like what I do, please do me a huge favor. Tell your friends about it. Help me grow by telling your friends about this podcast.